Hello and assalamu alaikum. My name is Tariq Ahmed. The Arabs used to have a prayer. Oh Allah, protect us from every Tariq, except the one who brings good. And I pray that in this episode of The Democratic Way, this ninth episode, that I will be a Tariq who brings you good. And it is the ninth episode. It's the last episode of 2025. It is the last episode of this first season of The Democratic Way. Thank you so much for all of the times that you have liked episodes in this series, that you have shared them, that you have commented on them. And thank you for subscribing at taraqa.substack.com, taraqa.substack.com. Thank you so much for subscribing at YouTube if that's what you prefer, or wherever it is that you watch your podcast series. Thank you so much for subscribing. We have been talking about President Bill Clinton for the last few episodes. In episode 7, we talked about his campaign in 1992 to become the Democratic nominee, and we talked about how that pushed the Democratic Party to the right in terms of policy. He was the most conservative of a wide field of candidates in that year. And after he was elected, he brought that leadership team from his campaign into the White House with him, and they stayed with him in 1996. He won the presidency, retained it in the 1996 election, and so he had an 8-year presidency. And we talked in episode 8 about his domestic policy. And he had said he would be tough on crime. Well, I would say that he was tough on the weak and tough on the poor. And he demonstrated that through his crime bill in 1994. And he demonstrated it through his attacks on welfare and his idea of what healthcare should be in the United States. He demonstrated that he was very tough on the poor and tough on the weak. And he also demonstrated that he was, and we talked about this in episode 8 at the end of it, that he was capable of being very soft on the rich and on the powerful. And he was very, very conservative, again, with policy initiatives, much of which had begun with Republicans, such as free trade, and also by deregulating banks and the financial industry. Those were all things that benefited the rich, as opposed to his other domestic policy agendas, which had been tough on the poor and the weak. And when we turn to foreign policy, I would say that in many ways, there was a continuation of the same. So when Bill Clinton's 8 years in office in terms of foreign policy are extraordinary in many ways. I mean, it is a very busy 8 years. You find him befriending Boris Yeltsin, the then president of Russia. You find him trying to help Russia to be more capitalist. You find Bill Clinton very significantly intervening in the Middle East. He was hoping to be the next Jimmy Carter, in as much as he got a peace deal signed between Yitzhak Rabin, the Prime Minister of Israel, and Yasser Arafat, the head of the PLO. He got that signed in Washington, D.C., but the Oslo Accord, as we know it, that has been one of the great tragedies of the Middle East. Why? Well, the Israeli hardliners, a Jewish fanatic, assassinated Yitzhak Rabin just for having signed Oslo. Just because, and he signed Oslo with the stated intention by all the parties that it would be a roadmap towards recognition of a Palestinian state. Not very easy to get to, not a very easy roadmap by any means, but a roadmap, a framework. And so he was assassinated by a Zionist for that. But in particular, because he was assassinated and because the leadership of Israel shifted farther to the right, Oslo has become the framework through which the two-state solution may never take place. Because gradually over time, those portions of the West Bank that could have become a Palestinian state have been sliced and further restricted until you have almost no hope for peace, much less a two-state solution. And so this is inevitably a legacy of Bill Clinton's Oslo. There were 2 other genocides taking place in the world, in Rwanda and in Bosnia. And Bill Clinton did help to end both of those genocides. It's the way that he ended, in particular, the genocide in Bosnia that really deserves a little bit of inspection. In Bosnia, first of all, when the Serbs and Croats were attacking Bosniaks, and it started off with just the Serbs doing it, but then the Croats joined in as well, Bill Clinton that whole time imposed an arms embargo. And an arms embargo sounds like a positive step if all the parties were equally armed or at least equally situated. The Serbs were in possession of most of the armament and most of the armories of the former Yugoslavia. It's the former Yugoslavia that broke up after the death of Marshal Tito into many small countries, the Balkanization, if you will, from Slovenia in the far west to Serbia and Montenegro in the far east of that country, this tiny country. So the Bosniaks didn't have any armaments. They had not seized the armories before the Serbs had. So the Serbs had the armories that were in Bosnia, and the Croats had the armory that was in Croatia. So you have Bosniaks who are the least able to defend themselves, the ones who are being slaughtered in the genocide by the Serbs in particular, and then by Croats as well. And they don't have any arms, and it's only when they start to turn the tide, when they start to reclaim territory from both Serbs and Croats, that Bill Clinton finally has leverage, because now Bill Clinton offers them the land that was taken by Bosnia and says now everybody has to be at peace. And he imposes the Dayton Accords, which give almost the entire coast of Bosnia to Croatia, and which gives the Serbs land all the way up to Sarajevo. And they had taken that land in order to commit some of the greatest war crimes against the people of Sarajevo, who, this was a pluralist city that you had Bosniaks and Croats and Serbs living together in Sarajevo, who were being sniped and shelled by Serbs in the surrounding highlands. And Bill Clinton gave that land to the Republika Srpska, which is an autonomous region within Bosnia. He also said, hey, you got 3 different ethnic groups. Why don't you have a triumvirate for president? You need to have one president from each of you. And I mean, the worst governing model. And by the way, a hamstring not imposed on either Serbia or on Croatia. No broken government for either of those. Instead, they can elect who they like. So Bill Clinton's idea of foreign policy is just ridiculous. And nearby in our own hemisphere, Bill Clinton, for example, went to Haiti, and I hope to talk about Haiti a lot more in the next season of the Democratic Way, about the history of the United States and Haiti, because here's a country that has been not only democratic but also um, free for people of all colors, much before the United States. Because when the United States became a democracy, we still had slaves. We still enslaved people, and we still treated black people, even if they had their freedom for any reason, we still treated them awfully, all the way up until the Civil War, when they finally emancipated them, and then we treated them badly again with Jim Crow. So Haiti, Haiti is treated by Bill Clinton almost as though he were one of the. Okay, so I have to be kind. I have to remind myself to be kind. Bill Clinton treats Haiti very badly and destabilizes its democracy. And he also imposes economic conditions on Haiti that are ridiculous by making them accept agricultural products from the United States that they didn't need, and by ruining their own agricultural uh, uh, self-sufficiency. That's Bill Clinton. But the one thing in particular that I really want to talk about, and I really have to remind myself to be kind over, is Bill Clinton's policy in Iraq. Now, the president before Bill Clinton, George H.W. Bush, invaded Iraq. We had the first Gulf War, and Bill Clinton's solution to what to do about Iraq is to impose sanctions. He doesn't invade, but he imposes sanctions. These are sanctions that affect food, that affect medicines. And in the course of his 8 years as president, Bill Clinton kills, through sanctions, over 500,000 Iraqi children. And this is where the this podcast has been a real blessing for me, in as much as it has forced me, one, to think about this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that kindness is not to be found in anything, but that it adds to its beauty and is not withdrawn from anything, but it makes it defective. And as I think I've mentioned several times before, that hadith has, it really shaped how I've approached this podcast series. And it has shaped for me in particular how I talk about these foreign policy actions. And it's because of this approach that the gravity of those 500,000 deaths finally truly sank in for me. I mean, I think anybody who's watched Democracy Now! Would also say that they have heard about this tragedy. Madeleine Albright, who was Bill Clinton's Secretary of State, was asked about it, and she admitted, that they had been killed, and she was asked, was it worth it as a foreign policy outcome, and she said yes, because that's the kind of perspective that the Clinton leadership had. 500,000. When before I started this podcast series, when I was reacting to the criticisms of people who had opposed my not voting for Kamala Harris, that's where all this started. I didn't vote for Kamala Harris. I didn't feel bad about not voting for her. And there are lots of people who are very angry at people like me who didn't vote for Kamala Harris. But I wasn't going to vote for her because of what Joe Biden and she did to the people of Gaza. It sickened me too much. And she had said she wasn't going to change anything. And as far as we know, not counting children buried under the rubble who have never been counted, we know of more than 20,000 Gazan children who have been killed since October 7th, 2023. That's just over 2 years. So I want you to think about this. Let's say that it wasn't 20,000. Let's say that it was 30,000. Let's just say that it was 30,000. That would be 15,000 children a year. And Bill Clinton was president for 8 years. And that would be 120,000 children. But he killed more than 4 times that many. So as much as I've been upset about Gaza, and I'm not saying that anybody should not be upset about Gaza, or the West Bank for that matter, but as much as I am upset about that, I can't be self-righteous against the people who voted for Kamala Harris. I can't be self-righteous for the people who against the people who voted for Donald Trump. I can't be self-righteous against anybody because I voted for Bill Clinton. I campaigned for him. I was at the Democratic Convention in 1996, not as a delegate. I worked for a superdelegate at the time. I had good memories of the convention. I remember shadowboxing with Muhammad Ali. I was walking on a mezzanine. He was walking the other direction. He saw me. I had a beard. It wasn't this long then, and it wasn't white then. It was a black beard, but still, he saw me. He sees that I'm a Muslim. He shadowboxing with me. It was one of the nicest things that happened to me when I worked on Capitol Hill. But I mean, 500,000 children died in Iraq because of that president. The gravity of it is still, it still echoes. And I can't be harsh to the people who voted the way they voted because I feel like I need forgiveness. So I hope that this last episode of the year leaves you with the message that I have, which is that, one, I've learned very much not to be angry in my political commentary. I've learned also not to be hasty. The importance of maintaining kindness in our political rhetoric so that it's not defective, so that it doesn't break apart all around us. We see so many instances of politicians who have no kindness in their rhetoric and have commentators who likewise are so angry and are so full of vitriol in their commentary. I would say that all of that is defective, and I hope you would agree with me. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope to see you next year in upcoming episodes of this podcast.